far left progressive ideas go crazy because they essentially deny agency, right? Like when they get extreme, it's just like, well,
right.
if we could have the perfect system and the perfect environment, then there would be no crime. No one would do. And I'm just like, you're a goofball.
We used to be, black, but now it is people of color. Well, we're becoming less diverse in the attempt to make everyone represented. One of the defining traits of being a far left is, you kind of go, individuals don't matter.
The UK never had the level of the racism and segregation and so on that the USA did.
One of the best things someone said to me, she said, probability is clumpy.
Ed Latimore, welcome back to Real Talk with Zuby. How are you doing, bro?
It's a great morning, man. Great morning. I'm just blessed to be here for sure.
Awesome, man. You were one of the first guests I had on the pod way back when I started in 2019, as far as I remember. So a lot of stuff has happened in that past 6 years or so when you were last on. So first of all, we were just talking about fatherhood. I became a father very recently, and you've now been a dad for a couple of years. So I wanted to jump off the conversation there. I wanted to kind of just catch up on everything that's been happening over the years. So just give me an update. How has fatherhood been? What else has been going on in your life? There have been a lot of moves.
Yeah, so fatherhood has been great. It's just a cool job. And I wouldn't even want to call it a job, man. I have a it's like a Pokemon or a shadow, man. It's always there. And that's what it is. Like I've seen these graphs where it's like the amount of time you spend with your kid in their first 10 years. And really it is all your time, especially if you like don't put them in daycare, which we don't. He'll be starting a Montessori school this fall, but that's only 2 days a week for like half the day. But so he's like always with us, and it really is just this cool bonding experience. I don't think there's really anything like it. Even your wife is not close because you meet your wife later in life, but this person from the minute they're born, they're like stuck with you. And I got like I don't want to say lucky because that sounds off for what I'm about to say, but when he was born, my wife had to be rushed into surgery. And so I got to do the whole golden hour thing where you hold the baby afterwards on your chest. And it was just a cool, I was like, wow, man, you're here and you're awesome. And it was like, it was cool. My best friend called me from LA and we were talking. And then my son sneezed. And because he's never heard sneezing before, he started crying loud as heck. And I said, all right, man, I got to go. This is my life now. That pretty much sums up all of this. Like this, dealing with this person, learning about the world, and seeing the reaction, everything. It's been a great time. In fact, like when you were asking that, you said what else has been going on, and I realized something. Like it's been 6 years, and there has been a lot of other stuff that's happened in 6 years. But the thing that is dominating my mind is the thing that's only been around for like a third of those 6 years is my child and my family. The other stuff that's happened is, I lived in Portugal for a while, great country. Finally going back in October, after everything involved in the other big thing, which is the book deal, and that book drops in August, and there's a bunch of stuff I got lined up after that for sure. And I'm going to not take anything so we can go spend the like a month in the Iberian Peninsula, starting in Spain and then Portugal to see because for people who don't know, I don't just have this random love affair with Portugal, great country, but my wife is Portuguese, so that is a good time. So my son will get to go see, and we're going to try and register him as a citizen. So you never know when you need another location to go. But greatest gift I can give my son, because I ain't from anything, is another citizenship, just by default of who his parents are.
Yeah, it's a huge blessing. I think right off the bat, my son was born with three, but at least three, but maybe four. Might even be five.
Because you're a UK guy,
Yeah.
From what you told me, your wife's
Yeah.
American.
So yeah, Nigerian citizen as well. And then
Oh,
my
that's
wife's
right too. I forgot all about that part.
Yep. Yep. And my wife's parents are from Cuba and Panama originally, so you could probably get citizenship by descent if you wanted to. What have been some of the biggest lessons you've learned since becoming a father? And I ask this specifically because you're someone who talks a lot about your own childhood and what it was like growing up, how you did. So becoming a father for the first time, I would imagine that's just caused you, as someone who's just, I consider you a very insightful and introspective person. You're someone who likes to like analyze the world and people and relationships and all that. So I'm curious, what sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Have you had any sort of like massive insights or revelatory things?
Well, okay, so I don't know if they're massive or anything like that. I can talk about some things that I hadn't thought about at all, and some things that kind of resurfaced. So a big thing that really happened, especially in the first few months, I didn't think much about my dad at all. Not growing up. I'm not one of those guys who never met his father. I'm always clear about that. But he didn't play a role in my life. He showed up. I tried to calculate this one time. I think collectively before my dad died when I was 18, probably spent 30, maybe 40 hours with him collectively. And that's a stretch because what my dad would do is he moved out of the city and he would come and visit like twice a year, but it was never to visit like explicitly us. It was for his friends and family here, but not to see us. And that was very clear because sometimes he'd show up and we wouldn't even know. We would find out after the fact that he was in the city, or when he did bring us along. It was rarely. I'm trying to think about where it was just us doing something. It was always going to his brother's house or going to his friends, and we'd hang around. Anyhow, what ended up happening is I'm sitting there with my kid, and I'm like, look, man, this little thing is annoying. It just cries and it poos, and I just gotta feed it, and it's a lot of work. But I'm already inexorably bonded to this child. I couldn't imagine moving to a completely different city. I understand the parents not working out. I don't think that's best. I think you should be way more discerning with who you have children with, to where that's not an issue, or bite the bullet and be like, we're gonna make this work. But I understand if you have irreconcilable differences, splitting. I get that. But to move to another city and then to not be involved in your children's life, especially watching how they're growing up. We grew up, I'm always clear to say, as poor as you can be in America, where I grew up as poor as I could be in America, in public housing projects, and I dealt with abuse from God, at least one guy for sure that my mom was seeing, and nobody stepped in to protect me. The person who was supposed to be there to protect me wasn't there, and I got this low level anger. It really was bad. Like, I'm not a therapy dude. You're never really going to hear me say you need to go to therapy. This was the first time in my life where I was like, I might really need to see somebody. In fact, I started talking to a friend of mine who is a therapist in training, or getting their hours to do it, and was just talking because I couldn't process this because it didn't make sense to me, because I'm like, I feel this. How could you not feel this responsibility for your child? So I had to deal with that all over again. I had got to a point, I my mom always used to say to me, she's like, I don't know why you're so mad at me. Your dad's the one who left. And I'm like, I don't have, he's not there for me to really be mad at. So I don't have a feeling. So I got to deal with you. And you messed up in a lot of ways. But I had largely worked through that. In fact, I'd say I completely worked through it. I had got to a point where I had a good relationship, or at least a functional relationship with my mom until she died. My dad had never had any reason to do it until I had my son, and I was like, "What is wrong with you? Why?" And it made me angry. And then, um, I happened to meet a cousin of mine who I'd never met growing up. I just happened to be out wearing one of my boxing shirts that had my name on it. Somebody at the bank was like, "Yo, are you related to Michael Latimore?" I was like, "Yeah, I think he died though." He was like, "Oh, he was so young." I'm like, "What do you mean he was so young? He was like 50 something." Uh, and they were like, "No, no, no, like the basketball." So I ended up meeting his son, and turns out his dad did the same thing. My dad's brother, Michael, and then he had a son named Mike. And I just got to deal with all of that. That was like the big thing emotionally that at least in terms of impact that I remember very clear. For something more positive, though, um, I I find it really interesting. There's there's just this. I'm watching him learn our mannerisms, and I'm my two worldviews are clashing, and I won't say clash, but they're reconciling with one another. On the one hand, I do not believe that personality is inherently genetic. I just it doesn't make sense to me. Like there are certain aspects that make up your personality that I'm sure you get from your parents because of how your brain chemistry or whatever works, right? And probably some of that is inheritable. And on the other hand, um, I'm starting to see stuff in him, and I'm like, you are me. You have a lot of me, but you have a lot of your mother, and it's funny seeing how those things come together. A big thing that I find so interesting. This is a very conscientious child. As far as children go, and man, you always got to be careful. You go, okay, what are baby things, and what are my baby things, and his focus is his thing. Like we know that because we watched him at Kinder Music. One kid saw a truck. He loves trucks. Saw a truck. So all the kids in the class, like 6 or 7 of them, go over and look at these trucks, and they get back to the lesson for the day. It's music. Kids love music. This guy's sitting there just staring at the trucks and gets mad when we try and take him away. And it's like that with everything. He's got this focus and he's got this attention to like the order of things. Everything's got to go somewhere, uh, and that's cool. But he's not reckless. He's very much like his mom, with a little bit of me though, but just in the areas where it's fun to be annoying. He's got this great sense of humor. I didn't even know babies could have a sense of humor, but he's like 10 months old, sitting in the hot chair when we're learning to feed, and he's taking the food, putting it on his head, and then looking at us, going, where's it at? And I'm like, wow, you're trying to, like, you're making a joke, like, and now he says, "I funny," or "Henry funny," and it's a good time. So the negative stuff, um, I worked through it, and I did work through it because I learned some stuff. I learned some stuff. I had lunch with my uncle, and he explained to me that when my dad was 4 and he was 2, because my dad's older than my uncle Steve, um, their father just bounced. He just went, started a new family, and this was after or right before. Either way, my dad lost his mom to pneumonia, and they from the ghetto. I mean, my whole family's from the ghetto, so they had to navigate the ghetto, the hood, like this. Now, this wasn't post '80s ghetto, but when it was cracking guns and it was really violent, but it was still the hood. They had to deal with this growing up, and it put a lot of my family stuff in general in perspective. But the one thing it did for me is I was like, okay, my dad probably thought realistically, that the little bit of involvement he had in my life was a vast improvement over what he experienced, and so he was fine with that. That doesn't make it okay by any stretch of the imagination, because there's some things I still cannot get to. I also got to remember too, my dad's a boomer, because most of our parents are as millennials, and their generation, how much time they spent with their kids, vastly different expectations. Okay, I can work with that in my head. I can think my way to forgiveness, but it's hard. It's very hard. And all I can do really at this point is make sure that my son doesn't ever have to question if somebody cares about him. He'll never be in danger. I know that if something happens to me, that he's got a really good, at least, he's got a really good family network. One of the best things I did totally on accident. I don't want to make it sound like this was intentional. Is I picked a great woman with a great family, and they love him, and they're very stable individuals who are involved in his life, even from afar. Her sisters live in Florida, Philadelphia, and Australia, and it's a great experience to see. he'd get that. And then, no one in my family has even reached out to really try and meet the kid. One person did, and my sister is here. That's it. So that's fine. I say to myself, I go, look, sometimes to break generational curses, you gotta just start the whole thing over. That I'm fine with that, but that awareness of what I'm trying to do for his kids and his life going forward, that means I have to be intentional with a lot of things, like exposing him to people and making sure he understands how to be a good person, how to be a likable person, not just a good one, but likable. I think those things are really important, especially since he's gonna grow up realistically. He's got cousins in Australia, but Australia's far, man. Uh, but no other real family, so he's gonna have to pretty much do what I did growing up and make family. Choose the family you get, and that requires being a good person and a likable person and a person that people want to bring into their family.
Man, you've said a lot. I could go in so many directions. Gosh, I have like 15 questions in my head right now. The first thing I want to ask is, if you could have a conversation with your father, what would you want to ask him?
Oh man, I'd want to know. Actually, I'll tell you exactly what I want to know. It took me. I thought of no. Here's what I want to know. Look, I love my mom, or I mean, I still love my mom, but it's that love where it's like, I don't want to say obligatory. That sounds incorrect. It's kind of the love of someone who took care of you. They might have did a bad job, but I mean, who else was going to do it, right? But I don't understand how someone. I don't understand why he liked my mom. I don't get that. I understand the first kid. I get it. Shit happens. Okay. I don't understand the second one. 3.5 years later, I asked my uncle this. I said, "Yo, can you help me understand how this happened? Because they did not get along. My mom is now my dad had his issues too, but my mom is a hard person to get along. I mean, that's part of the class we have. I don't want to know what you were thinking, and why you did that. Especially, my mom used to always say my dad didn't want kids, and I asked him one of the few. There was a small overlap of time where I was old enough to ask questions that I wanted to know and I could understand the answers to. And he was alive because he died when I was 18. It'd be great if he was still alive and I could pick his brain. And I asked him, I was like, look, man, she always said you didn't want us. Like, is that true? And he said, yeah, it was true. We didn't have any money. It was poor. I'm like, okay, how'd you get two of us 2 or 3.5 years apart? It's not like y'all stayed together or anything. Like, it's crazy. In terms of like, if you want to like put a social standard on it, certainly better than my mom having two baby daddies, right? Uh, but at the same time, I don't get it. But I would want to know like what his thinking was. But it was different times, I was 37, 36, 37 ish, when I can't remember. I think I'm pretty sure I was 37 when he was born. Dad was, if I'm doing the math right off the top of my head, because I know how old my mom was, he would have been 27. So it's 10-year difference. 10-year difference in a very different world. So who knows? But I'd want to know that. And I'd want to know if he knew about the guy she was seeing. I mean, who just terrorized us, man. Like beat the hell out of me and my sister. I asked my sister a few weeks ago while I was writing the book, because there are things you got to remember. And I'm like, do you remember this guy beating you with a hanger? She was like, two. She was like, yeah, I remember that. And yeah, it was a crazy story. I had started kindergarten, and so I was gone during the day. And my sister was at home, and this was the guy who was serving as the babysitter, because the other babysitter was a junkie, and like not just kind of a junkie. I don't know like if you got any experience dealing with junkies, but one thing that consistently amazes me about these people is the dedication to the habit. Well, I mean, that's what addiction is. If you want to like phrase it positively, it's dedication to a habit, an unwavering dedication to a habit. Uh, and once, uh, while she was babysitting me, she had left out a loaded spike, I mean, loaded syringe full of heroin. I thought it was water, so picked it up and sprayed it. She lost it and tried to get reimbursed. So I guess my mom thought this dude was the alternative, was a better alternative to having this person babysit us. But this motherfucker's psycho, man. And then when I'm writing the book, I'm looking up, because you can look up criminal records. At least in PA, every state is a little different. But in Pennsylvania, where I live, you can like if we got someone's name and birthday, you can go look up and see what their charges are, if they got any charges at all. And he's got a ton of these abuse charges, man, and stalking and shit. He's crazy dude. Uh, but I can't remember coming home from school, and he was like, "Hey," he like called my sister out, like, "Tell your brother what you did. My sister's crying." And in my memory, what I remember the event, I'm like, "Oh, I remember seeing my sister in a nightgown, all crying and bruised up and beat." But what I don't comprehend, because I'm only 5, is that she's only 2. And I'm like, what now that my son's 2.5, I couldn't imagine. Like, it's stuff like this that when you write a memoir, which is basically what I did. I wish the publisher told me I was writing a memoir. I would have figured it would have been a much smoother process for writing. But that's a different animal and different discussion entirely. You got to remember these things, and you got to fact check them. Uh, and I fact checked one thing with my sister. Turns out I had changed that memory a little, but this memory I wanted to be sure about as well, and she 100% remembered, because you don't forget stuff like that. People, I got my early memories are when you have a jacked childhood, your brain will block stuff out, no doubt. I blocked out for a long time. My mom told me this when I was alive. I guess when I was 10, I just randomly remembered. So now I don't remember not remembering, right? But when I was 10, I just was like, who's Hank? Um, and what happened to his family kind of deal. Because when I was like 3, my sister was alive. Your parents tell you don't cross the street. Working on don't cross the street right now. You look both ways. Deal with my kid right now, and this kid, I guess he didn't get that lesson when he was crossing the street to the ice cream truck. There was a high speed police chase going on, and I still remember seeing the body and everything. And this is a very clear memory. I'm like 3.5 though, not even. And you remember these things; they stay in your head. And so my sister remembering that too is no surprise. It is craziness. But I'd want to know: did he know how crazy this dude was? Did he care? Did he? Well, why did he make an effort to pull us out of the situation? Because look, um, my dad wasn't no high earner, nothing like that, but he didn't live in those circumstances. He could have been like, "Hey, this is unacceptable." But for whatever reason, he decided maybe he did not know, uh, but he also knew where we lived and what we dealt with on a daily basis, and he knew the type of person my mom was. So, I'd want to ask him, why the distance? Did you really not want kids that bad?
That's heavy, man. That's very heavy. I mean, it's not a politically correct question, but I have to ask it because it's the flip side of it. But have you ever had it? Did you ever have a conversation with your mom about this? Like why are these the dudes you're picking? Like what's going on here? Did you ever have that conversation?
To my mom's credit, um, my mom's got a lot of flaws, a lot of flaws. Way more than I don't know. Some people think I don't. At least my mom didn't think I gave her enough credit. I think I got an honest assessment of the situation, and because I wasn't bonded or attached to her in that sort of way, I had no problem wondering and asking questions, and I got to see a different life. But one of the things she did do well eventually is, there was that guy for a little while, and then after that, there weren't any real men in our life. So so I think when my mom in her way of showing love, she was way more discerning. I mean, it just never was. I'm trying to. In fact, when I told this story in my newsletter, my mom used to be part of my newsletter, and she got pissed because uh, she's like, "Was your childhood really that bad?" I'm like, "Are you joking? Like if you took away everything, all the stories, and I just told you where we lived in the city, yes, it was that bad. And just because you can't handle it and you were responsible for it doesn't mean I'm lying." And I said to her, "If I'm lying, I'll tell me if I'm telling a lie." And that was the end of that. She unsubscribed, whatever. Right? But after that, she didn't really bring guys around, which was her way of protecting. Because look, I mean, you probably know the stat, and if you don't know, you're gonna know now. The the biggest threat, however you want to measure the threat, yeah. Well, in terms of entities, yes, yeah, yes. Not is they put it in the stats when I was looking this up because I was making a point when I was writing. A non-biological relative male living with the child is the second most likely one to kill them, and the first likely one or most likely one to hurt them. You know who the most likely one to kill them is?
Their mother? That's the biggest source of death worldwide. It's just not counted in the statistics in most people's brains.
Yeah, and people don't like to discuss that. Now, part of what's going on, we got to be intellectually honest here. Well, part of what's going on, but there's only a part, is that they spend the most time with the kid. So it only reasons that they're going to be the most likely source of death. But that's a technicality. Whenever someone brings it up, it's a technicality. That's all it is. Because like in no sane universe should someone, and I only know this because people have raised that point to me, that they spend the most time, so it makes sense. I'm like, I'm trying to think. That's like saying like, oh yeah, it makes sense that you would OD. You were shooting heroin. I'm like, bro, you're not supposed to OD. Like that's not the point. Uh, yes, that's what happened. Um, but when they like dive deeper, we got to understand. We got to understand the real reason so we can solve the real problem. It just comes with so much stress, and this is a lesson I have picked up too, being a father. There are two of us. We are financially stable. We don't work, or rather, we don't have to leave the house. So we don't work for someone else. My wife has her business. I have my writing, and it's stressful. But when there's stress, we can juggle it, move it off. We bring people in to help. We got a wonderful babysitter we found who comes, like, we're here in the house working, but he's here splitting the stress. If one of us is sick, the other can carry the slack. If one of us needs to go grocery shopping, the other one can. If we don't have to go grocery shopping, we live in the Instacart and Uber age. It's still a hard time. So I think about it, it's just you, and you don't have those resources, especially before we had all this internet stuff and you could order groceries. That's the thing about there was this time period you couldn't take them shopping with you. It just wasn't one. At least not by yourself. You weren't going to get anything done. So it's stressful and they snap. And that's not an excuse. That part is not an excuse, but it is. If we're to ever solve a problem, we need to understand why that problem exists. Also, and again, this is not politically correct, but I gotta, I hate the immediate snapback. You picked a guy, you get to pick better. That's 100% true. But it's not. That's not why I hate it. It's because it's false. It's 100% true. Why I dislike it is because it's like looking at a kid. It's like looking at a 15-year-old kid who ends up catching, a life charge and going, "Well, you pulled the trigger." Absolutely true. Or we won't even say 15 because in this country they've changed the laws a little. You can still catch a life sentence, but it's harder. Got a cousin that just came home after doing 33 years of a life sentence. Um, because he got sentenced when he was 17, and they decided you can't give life without parole to people who are minors, and they looked at his prison record. No, he did the crime. It's not like it was a false imprisonment. He shot that motherfucker. And they decided you can come home now with life. Spent more than half his life in prison, most of his life actually. He went in at 17, got out at 51. But where I'm going with that is that if just because she picked him, that doesn't look at the circumstances behind it. And I know you talk a lot about political stuff, and one of the things that I think is a nuanced conversation, rather than going to the extreme of either end with this, is look, yes, we make our decisions. I'm never going to be the guy that's going to be like, look, it's not your fault. You grew up this way. The system is trying to hold you down. I'll never be that guy. It hasn't been my experience. And when I look at things objectively, it's not the experience of most people in the 20th and 21st centuries. With that said, that same cousin I was telling you about that came home for life, he's got another younger brother who was not even born when he went in, he's as a defense lawyer told me, they're going to retire, which is what they did. They gave him 24 years for selling fentanyl to an undercover, and then when he was out on bail, he went and smoked the dude who snitched. So that trial is not this. So he'll never see the light of day. It's 4 different baby mamas, so net negative on the world. And when I see situations like that, I gotta ask myself, okay, same household, same neighborhood, same set of influences, never met each other on the outside, or anything like that, same path. I've seen enough to know that yes, your environment very much loads the gun. Yeah, your choices pull the triggers, so to speak, but your environment plays a big role. And it's sad, but it's like when I tell it, but it's the same thing. You get at some point, people got to learn agency. Now, however they learn that, it's how they learn it. Sometimes you get lucky and you don't do anything too crazy before you get pinched and jammed up, and you can't do anything about it. It's like I tell people how I stopped drinking. I said, look, I gotta look and go. If I kill somebody behind the wheel, the judge isn't going to go, well, you had this terrible childhood. You had these bad experiences. It's okay. Like, nah. And it's not going to bring a person back, and it's not going to protect them from harm. So you got to have this choice. But nature's funny, man. The irony is that if you grow up in this environment, you're not going to learn that lesson the way you should learn it. So it's a messed up situation across the board for people who grow up like me, and that's why, like I was saying earlier, man, like a lot of times I consider myself blessed because little circumstances, little things make a big difference, and fortunately I got exposed to just enough of them to change my thinking. First small, and then over time these small differences in trajectory add up to big differences 10, 20 years down the line. And I'm fortunate to be here.
Yeah, massively, man. I think in a lot of stuff, the reason why a lot of conversations end up just becoming stupid is because people want to think in pure binary and either or. So, earlier on, you were talking about becoming a father and you were talking about the whole nature versus nurture debate. And I'm like, it's obviously nature and nurture, like obviously, right? Like it's like why is this even a debate, right? The idea that, I mean, okay, let's think about this. If it were just nature, then parenting and how you're raised would not matter. It would have no effect, right? It would have no effect. It would just be like kids are just born. They could just be feral, right? Just let them go, and they're going to be what they're going to be. We all know that that's not true. We all know it's better to have a mother and a father. It's better to have them that love you and love each other. It's better to grow up rich than it is to be poor. It's better to be in a good environment, generally speaking, than in a bad. Like everyone knows this. There's no debate, and these are not minor factors. At the same time, if it were only nurture, then all siblings born in the same household, raised the same way, like they'd be identical, right? Like if someone had, I'm one of 5 kids. My dad is one of 11. My mom is one of 9. Um, right? Like every kid would just be the same, right? You just pursue the same things. You got the same interests. You earn the same income. You have the same behavior. And it's like, well, that's not true. Like, do myself and my siblings have things in common? Yeah, of course. We're siblings and we were raised by the same parents. But we're also very different in a lot of ways. And we've taken different life paths and we've all, thank God, become successful in our own way. But like, we're pretty different people, right? So obviously there's something in each of our DNA, just like we look different and we're different heights and we have different, right? Like,
Right.
so it's just both. So when people are like, oh, environment is everything or personal responsibility is everything, it's like, well, it's just so obviously not. And if you believed it was just environment, and this is why a lot of the sort of like far left progressive ideas go crazy because they essentially deny agency, right? Like when they get extreme, it's just like, well,
Right.
if we could have the perfect system and the perfect environment, then there would be no crime. No one would do. And I'm just like, you're a goofball. Like that's not reality. Like there are evil, wicked people, even decent people. We have agency, right? Like if one of us wanted to go do something crazy, we have the power and the like. If we want, I don't know why we'd
To go
want
do
to,
something
but yeah,
crazy.
you're like, yeah, right? You can go and do it, right? And the idea that like we shouldn't be held responsible for it or something, I'm like, no, that's nuts. So and again, like you look at yourself, you were just explaining everything you went through, the way you grew up, people you grew up with around, the way even your father was, the way even your uncle, like you're talking about breaking a generational cycle. And you yourself, through so many things you've done, whether that's becoming sober, whether that's success in your career, whether that's the step you're taking now with your wife and with your child, like you are personally and consciously making those decisions. You could have just been like, well, hey, I grew up in the hood. I'm going to just repeat the same crap that is landing these other people in prison. Like you could do that. And some people would be like, oh, well, he
And no
had.
one would expect anything else of it. They'd be like, nothing. That's what do you expect? I'm like, no, that's not how it goes, man. It's um you know, probability is a hard thing for people. And because when you think about probability, I don't know if you ever thought of it this way, but you got a strong math background, so maybe you have. Um, what you're trying to do with probability is imagine something that is impossible to imagine, which is if you took an infinite number of events or trials, how many times would this thing happen? And that's what you're really trying to express when you write it out and calculate. Is the denominator approaches infinity? What does this look like in terms of events? And it says approaches, not at infinity. That by itself is hard, but that's what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to assign a probability to these outcomes, and we can't do it perfectly, and and we'll be wrong a lot because when you go, okay, 60% chance. Well, how do you know it's 60% chances? Did you do infinite trials and 60% of them came back? No. So we regress to the simplest explanation, and a lot of times the simplest explanation is good. Okay, but if you go too simple, you remove vital parts to make the idea make sense, and then it becomes this binary thing that is useless. It's actually worse than useless. It's destructive. So yes, there's a chance. Look, this blows your mind. Both your parents are black, both mine are black, but there's a chance you could get blue eyes. It's unlikely, but if you get blue eyes, you got to deal with that, right? That's how this works, and that would mess with people. That would mess with your parents. They'd be like, okay, what? Why do your dad talking about why has he got blue eyes? Come on, be real with me. I'm telling you, nothing happened, but come on, man, why like that kind of deal? People got to explain the world they're in, and they gotta make it make sense, and they got to make it make sense in a way that feels good. It's or at the very least justifies how they feel, aligns with how they feel. When you remember that, then a lot of stuff makes a lot of sense. You were talking about the far left idea, and I'll never forget this conversation I had with somebody. So at this point, it was a few years ago. I was talking about the difference between the far left and the far right, And the person who is very much on the left said, but there's really no such thing as left wing extremism. And I had two thoughts when I heard that. I said, you know, one, when you think something's not extreme, that's because you're so far gone that even far from your perspective, from your position, looks extreme, even if they're on your side. That was my first thought. The second one was, well, is it really a left or right thing? Or is horseshoe theory come along? I always say, the opposites at their extremes become indistinguishable. And so I just had this video. I just made this video. I was curious about it. I didn't think it would do well. It's not doing hot, but it was something I cared about, which is, why are certain black people going conservative? And I started digging into like the conservatism thing and the liberal thing. And in my definition, I realized one of the defining traits of being a far left is, you kind of go, individuals don't matter. And I didn't, and it's funny because it's hidden behind like, represent everyone, and we all need to be loved and and inclusion. But if you look at what diversity is, pure definition, when you decide that everyone that you need to put everyone in a box, you make everyone treated. What's the word I'm going to say? If everyone is different, then and we are all different, but we don't respect and acknowledge those differences for what they are. Well, we decide that some people can't be. It's like a BIPOC, right? That's what I want. That's where I really go with this. Okay, we used to be, black, but now it is people of color, and I'm like, well, we're becoming less diverse in the attempt to make everyone represented, which is no different, which is a different kind of exclusion and control and non-recognition of authority than what would typically be thought of as someone on the far right, which is we're all so separate, we're not even equal kind of deal. Now it's like we're all so equal, we're not going to be separated. You're all going to be colored, people of color, kind of deal. I always just found that idea interesting, but and that's a bit of a side note. But the main idea, people are very bad. They're bad at two things: the future. They're bad at thinking about the future, and they're very bad at thinking about the fact that the world is probabilistic rather than deterministic. We have to, we just got to go, okay, what are the chances? And that's where survivor bias creeps in. People look at my life and they go, okay, you know what you need to do? You need to get rid of all the privilege and get rid of both them parents and, and throw yourself in the middle of the public housing projects. That'll toughen you up. And I'm like, yeah, a lot of people, most people don't make it out of that. The ones, but that's what happens if you think too deterministically. Or if you think it's these circumstances lead to this. No, it's a chance, and you want to put the odds in your favor. That's all you can do. Shit happens still, but it's unlikely.
Yeah, you raised a lot of points. I actually watched that recent video you did on why more black people are in America, more black Americans are becoming
Oh, no
conservative.
kidding!
Yeah, no,
Thank
no,
you.
yeah, 100. Dude, I subscribe to your channel, man. You post a lot of interesting stuff. I subscribe to you on like like virtually everything I think I can. Yeah, you made a bunch of great points, but like with the horseshoe theory thing, that is very, very real. And as someone who is not like in politics, but who I guess a lot of people know I speak on politics and I'm connected to a lot of people in that world. There's a lot of things that are very, very similar about, the far right and the far left. And you touched on a few of them. One of them, of course, is just collectivism. And you touched on this, right? Like you move away from individualism and towards different forms of collectivism. And when you do that, you flatten the individual and it all becomes in group and out group. So whether someone's like genuinely far right or someone's like super far left, they're collectivists, right? It's like us versus them. And it's a very, they both play identity politics, right? So they like to categorize people. So again, the individuals don't matter. We're just going to put you in a category, and some of these categories are good and some of them are bad, and you're in or you're out. and how we treat you is not based on you as an individual. It's just based on what category you fit into. So whether that's you hate this race or ethnicity, or you hate people from this country, or you hate like really, it could be religious. It could be anything, right? It could just be these are the communities or groups that we like, and these are the ones we don't, and that's it. It doesn't matter how you are as an individual. It doesn't matter like your character, anything. And then I'd say the second thing, which is the scary part, and we've seen this especially in the 20th century. I was saying like that guy who you said doesn't think the far left exists. I'm like, has this person ever picked up any sort of history book of the past 100 years? Because last time I checked, in the past century, the far left killed more people by far than the far right did. And it's the willingness to use to use violence to meet your goals.
I wrote an essay on this, and maybe I'll make a video on it. But I started thinking about that same question, and what I realized is that whether it's far left or right, the thing that there are a few things in common at the state level, or rather, and I think how it looks governmentally and how it looks culturally. But they generally fall into the same ideas. You cannot speak against them. Kind of a censorship and a suppression of any type of free speech. And there is this willingness to use violence to achieve that means, and a control of the individual, whether that is of their actions outright or of how they think and what they can express. So that goes back to kind of the suppression of free speech, which really is just the suppression of your ability to criticize an idea. So, which is it's like the chicken or the egg. Does someone being an extremist make them stupid, or stupid people or low IQ, to be more precise? Does the suppression does an extreme perspective make your IQ lower, or does low IQ make you more susceptible to be an extreme? Either way, when you cannot criticize an idea, whether it's because you're not able to, or you genuinely can't, like you can't grapple with the complexities of an idea, break them down and go, this is good, this is bad, whatever. uh, Weaker ideas start to survive because they're not being killed off by good ideas. And when you group a bunch of people together, and I brought that chicken egg IQ extremism thing, that's fairly well documented. When they look at people in any political extreme ideology or politically extreme ideology, they tend to just be less intelligent. It's not, if you're an extremist listening to this, sorry about that, but you probably don't think you're an extremist. Everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, that's not me," if they hear this. But uh, where that comes from, if you get a bunch of people together who cannot or will not think critically about what is coming into their heads, the bad ideas stick around. It's like, I call it ideological inbreeding. That's why inbreeding is so dangerous, right? Because you don't bring in new DNA to kill off the weak DNA. So before you know it, you got the Habsburg chin, or you're the Habsburg chin of thinking. You are not able to analyze things, and you think it all works out great, and it really doesn't. Your ideas only seem good because no one's checked them, but then they hit reality, and you're like, whoa, you know. It's one of
Ideological
the things I'm really great
inbreeding.
at.
Ideological inbreeding is a fantastic term. I think I'm gonna use that in the future.
Oh man, I'll have to send you the essay after. I'm really proud of that because it's just these thoughts I have. But if you're not willing to think, life is going to be difficult
Mhm.
for you because you'll encounter reality and you're like, whoa. And as the world changes, you got to be willing to adapt. One of the things that people take for granted, I never take for granted for whatever reason. Maybe it's because I'm a fan of history and I'm a black dude, and every now and then I like to argue, and I don't like arguing with the wrong ideas. But um, people forget, like my wife is a white. Like if you look at her, you're not going to go, she's Portuguese. No, she looks like a white person, right? Um, but it wasn't until 1967 that like it was federally okay in the United States for me to be with her.
Mhm. That's
People
what.
forget
Yeah,
that.
that's
To put
wild.
that in perspective, my mom was born in
Yeah.
1962. a lot of your parents, a lot of our parents grew up in, well, you're not from the U.S., but in the U.S., a lot of our parents grew
No,
up at a time.
I'm not from the U.S. and my parents aren't from the U.S. But like, I've spoken to my dad about, my dad's amazing with history and he's got like such a smart guy, such a good memory. He's approaching 80, but it's so interesting talking to sort of people around his age because he just lived through so much, right? So like he remembers when he was, a young man and the USA, even though he wasn't in the USA, like they were going through their, desegregation and civil rights movements and so on. Yeah, like there's so many things that are history to us, but it's really interesting just to talk to someone who's like, oh yeah, like you lived through all these different decades. When we talk about the 60s or the 70s or it's like, oh yeah, you were a man at this time already. Like, what was it actually? What was it like? What were you seeing in the news? What were you seeing on the television and so on? And he just kind of can recall all of these things. Oh yeah, it used to be like this. And of course, the UK never had the level of the just sort of racism and segregation and so on that the USA did. Obviously there obviously there was racism and stuff, but like the US has like a pretty unique situation, right? Yes, it's got a more unique history. It's kind of interesting because the British Empire obviously existed and colonized so much of the world, and there was all this, but there wasn't like slavery going on in the UK. There weren't like these anti-miscegenation laws. There's no Jim Crow in the UK or redlining. All these things that Black Americans are very familiar with. So there's like certain parallels, but at the same time, the histories are pretty different, and also the demographics are very different. I mean, yeah, like Black people are like 2%, I think, of the British population, and I think if you were to exclude London, it's probably 1%.
Get out! I didn't realize it was that because look, the thing that's being imported from London or exported, I should say, from the UK that I'm familiar with, I hear some rap,
Yeah.
and not just you, but like
Oh, there's
who's
some
this
there's a lot
guy?
of dope rappers from the UK, man.
Gigs, I think
Okay,
his
yeah,
name is. Yeah, I got hip to that, but I guess I never really thought about it. And it makes perfect sense. I just assumed, for whatever reason, I got a buddy who's a boxer, and he's got citizenship with Jamaica and the UK. And he's a black dude. It's people black. I'm just like, okay, it is what it is. Uh, I just assumed, I guess, that there were as many in the UK, but I guess it's like you said, a unique history and a unique kind of growth and development. Fun fact: I know somehow we got off in the weeds about slavery, but like one of the things I found really interesting, I just learned this, and I should have known it. So when they made slavery illegal, like the practice of bringing in slaves, the U.S. and everyone kind of thought, oh, that'll be the end, and we'll stop seeing slaves. But people are smart; they were like, nah, we'll just breed them, and so. Uh, that's probably one of those things that's very different that did not happen in the United Kingdom, that we boomed. The South is a lot of black people in big cities, a lot of black people. Outside of that, it's probably like that. Once you exclude our London, is like once you
mm.
exclude Atlanta, DC, Detroit, Philly, a lot smaller. But fun times. But back to like that's why talking to you is so great, man. Because there's so many different things that we riff on and move on, and that are related to all things, not just in the state of the world, but in the state of our lives and how these things affect us. And we jumped off on the race out there, and that plays a significant part, or more in my life than I would have thought, but not in the way that you would think. I think one of the things, going back to that video, that kind of makes someone, or me, lean conservative, is I've seen the product of the hard work. Right, you take responsibility, you do the work, everything comes to you, and I've never felt like someone was keeping me from something for any other reason than because I didn't do the work to acquire it. Do I think it's always that case when someone experiences that? No, I think a lot of times people don't realize how hard it is to get something or how they're behaving, but it's not all the time. I'll never be the guy that's like that. Racism doesn't exist. That's a crazy thought.
Hmm.
Clearly, I can't control how other people think, and some of those people end up in positions to control outcomes of your life. I think those people are becoming. Now, I will say, I think culturally, those people are. I won't say phasing out, but are shrinking. Now today, it's like somebody says I'm racist or I'm a white
Yeah,
nationalist. They look at you like they still make you like kind of
yeah.
deal like you're around. Like what's wrong with you,
They're
bro?
they're they're
Like
very
that's how
rarely impressive
people look
people.
at it. Yeah, you're like, what is wrong with you? There's a list of names I could, just rattle off, and I'm not even gonna give them shine. Um, that I'm just familiar with, and every time that I get bored, I go look them up, and I go, man, you ain't doing like because once you do that, you put yourself in this position like who wants to deal with you? You're stuck. So for no other reason, the world's smaller, and you keep that stuff on the low, and people gonna think what they think, but race is never. I've never thought of it as a hindrance for my life, and that comes through. I think in the work I try to do and the decisions I make, and I just wish everyone took that level of responsibility. Because if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But make sure that you have maxed out the effort that you're going to put in. Or as I like to say, you take control of what you can control and take as much control of it as you can. And whatever's left after that, okay, let's see. Okay. Is it a big deal? Or not is it a big deal? But
Do you know something that I'll tell you what the biggest change, perhaps, in my worldview over the past year is, and it's kind of a hypothesis. I don't know if this is necessarily true, but it seems to explain some things to me in a way that I didn't really get before. So I'm kind of curious to put this idea to you and see what you think about it. And this idea is that, okay, so we both know that virtually every human trait exists on a bell curve, right? Height, intelligence, different personality factors. So I like pretty much everything exists on a bell curve. I increasingly believe that agency itself exists on a bell curve. I think there are high agency
yeah.
people and there are low age. I think most people fall in the normal distribution, and there are extreme high agency people who tend to be super successful. They take super responsibility, super accountability, everything like boom, like they're going out, they're killing it. Most entrepreneurs, I'd say, are on the far end of agency. And then I think there's also an extreme opposite end where the language that we are even speaking in and talking about personal responsibility and accountability and you've got to do this and you got to do like it kind of falls on deaf ears because I'm starting to think there are just some people who are just they're just low agency people and they're just going to go like those are the people where they truly are a product of their environment. They're going to go wherever the culture tells them, wherever their family leads, like whatever they're told, like they're just gonna go. And I'm starting to think that I never used to think of agency as like a personality trait. I used to think it's just something like, but I know I really am starting to think I think it's a personality trait. I think there are low agency people, and just like yeah, you can always alter someone's personality a little bit, or you can teach them. You can make someone who's an extreme introvert. You can teach them to be a little more extroverted. But I'm starting to think that yeah, like that's part of why culture is so important. Because if everyone was high agency, culture and advertising and marketing, all this stuff it wouldn't be very effective, right? Because everyone's just a critical thinker and high agency.
hmm
So whatever you bombard them with, it doesn't really matter. And I'm just like, well, that's obviously not true. But at the same time, we all get bombarded with all this stuff, and there are some people who like it hardly affects them, right? Like they're still going to just like do what they're doing, critically think, make their decisions. And then there are other people. It's like you can just change what they believe. You can change who they vote for. You can change what food they eat. You can just tell them like what to do. And similarly, even if you look at something as simple as
Yeah.
we're both into fitness, right? Even if you look at something as simple as like losing weight, okay. There are people who literally if they're genuinely unsure, like if you take a high agency person and they genuinely want to lose weight, it's not hard to get them to lose weight. You just show them what to do, and they just do it and repeat it, and they get the result. And then there are other people where it seems like you can give them all the information, you can handhold them, you can do this, you can do that, and it's like they they just won't. Um, and I'm just like, I don't know. I'm ranting a little bit, but that's something that I'm starting to think might be true.
No, no, no. Look, something I've said is like in fact, I know I've tweeted this. It's whether I've tweeted it a few times or just once or twice. Is that I believe ambition is follows a bell curve, right? That there are some people who they don't look that man for them getting out of bed is an achievement, and that's cool. And on the other end, it's the always want more type cats, and nothing's ever enough, always pushing. And I bring this. I always brought this up in the context of making sure you choose your profession accordingly. There are limitations like your ability and your intelligence, your ability to learn something. So can you pick it up? And then once you pick it up, how good can you become at it? But also like, what do you like? How hard are you willing to work? I have a friend who's fairly different from me in a lot of ways. One being a woman and stable house and this good family, white girl, all very different. Exact same IQ. We just came up in conversation. She decided to become a pharmacist. I hear her job. It sounds like it would drive me nuts. I couldn't day in day out the same, not the same thing, but it's a very community focused. It's pretty much the way I never really describe it to her this way, at least not seriously. But there's a lot of truth in this. It's like a combination of a social worker and a customer service rep with a high level professional degree. Like, and I would never want to do that. But they've done these different like studies where they're able to look at a person's SAT scores and figure out kind of what their rough IQ is. Uh, I went and decided to study physics, knowing that there wasn't really like there's no job physicist. Like it's one of those things that like it's a cool tag, but like no job. It's like I'm looking for a physicist. Like no, you end up doing a bunch of other different type of work. Um, but the minimum kind of IQ they figured out is like around the 128 range for this. So I've always thought that was interesting that people who have these similar mental abilities but very different levels of ambition and agency, and will choose different paths to go with that. And I think that is strongly related to this agency idea. I always used to tell my mom, well, no, I actually don't think I told my mom this. Maybe when she was older, but I told a lot of people this, and so my mom likely felt it. I go, the biggest difference between my sister and I, where the nature comes into play, is I I had that agency. The way you phrased it, um, the agency. I said, my mom could have. I said I could have been born in the slums of Calcutta and I'd have figured it out. My sister could have been, born with a silver spoon in her mouth like the winds or something, and she would not. She'd still need some guidance. The thing is, we just happen to be born closer to the slums than the palace. So I still managed to figure these things out. People think it's amazing when I tell them that when I was 14, well, not even 14, when I was 13, I told my mom, look, we got to go to this high school. I need you to get up this day and go register me for this school across town. We got to be first because it's a lottery system, so I don't miss out on getting out of this hellhole. My sister had never had any ideas to go do something like that, and they're like, "You're like 13, and you had that idea, that agency." I was like, to me, that what else was I going to do? I'm 13, like But when you phrase it like that agency is this bell curve, I did. Yeah, probably some high agency here. Looking at other areas in my life, yeah, I think there's some high agency. At the very least, I know that everything I do or don't do, uh, it all comes back on me.
That sounds obvious to higher agency people, but I think we both know that it's like a lot of
Yeah,
people don't.
I
A
think
lot of
so.
people don't think that way. Like the billions of people don't think that way, like at all. That's why it's always about the system and the everything's the system, the system, the system, and like the idea of agency and independent thought and action and decision making and accountability and responsibility, it kind of falls on deaf ears. There's people who even get mad when you speak that language because they're like, well, people can't, like that. People can't even do that. And I'm kind of like, what? Maybe some people cannot. Maybe they actually have a point. Maybe it's a distributed trait.
and and this is why running a society is, I got a pessimistic view. I think I think humans, if there's one thing we've proven time and time again, is that we will corrupt any system. It doesn't matter what it is. Man, look, my favorite again. I always said this about crypto. I'm like, somebody gonna start pulling y'all. It's gonna be bad too. And Sam Friedman came along and he figured out how to game y'all. And look, it's not corrupt or taking advantage of the system in the sense that he hacked and figured out how to break into people's wallets. But like I said, humans will corrupt any system and they'll figure it out. Why I bring this up is that you need a balance, okay? Because if we only had a high agency society where like you either make it or you don't, I think we would achieve a lot of material, measurable progress and success. But but since we now let's work on the premise that this agency thing is like a bell curve, that's at least half of us. We're not gonna make it. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing. But I think half of us are gonna be in a really bad position. Okay. But on the other end, if we just go, you know what? Doesn't really matter. It's all the system, and you get plugged into the right system or the wrong one. Let's working on the system. Let's forget about the individual and what they're capable of, what they want to do. Well, then you get a different problem. Well, this problem on right here, where we plug everyone into kind of the same outcome regardless of the process. Uh, but that's just another name for socialism, and like the real socialism, not socialist tendencies, but like that's like another name for, or even communism. Really. We all work for the same and do the same thing. This one over here, where only the strong survive. It's a little too close to anarchy for me. Like I got high agency, but I don't know if I want to go out. I got a buddy that does. He wakes up at 4 a.m. Got twin boys. Wakes up at 4 a.m. Is up there lifting. Does his whole lift. Goes and does tactical shooting. Look, he, that ain't what he does. He like hangs TVs and runs a construction company. If shit hits the fan, like he's my boy now. I don't know if I need that guy to be even exist. Like, definitely not my enemy, right? So that sounds too much like anarchy to me. So what we're trying to do, I would imagine, if I were in charge of a society, I'd be trying to find that middle ground. And I think the high agency people, I won't say high agency, I think the intelligent people understand this, but most people aren't smart and they want what works best for them. We want to get the thing that will benefit us the most and require the least amount of effort to do so. And when you have most people like that, you're going to end up with a lot of people who want systems that keep the floor high but the ceiling low. Only in this world or where this exists, where you would get people who are like, where you get slogans like "tax the rich." I'm like, don't y'all understand? Like, do you understand already that they
Well,
already like they pay a lot more
billionaires shouldn't
taxes than
exist.
you, like a lot more. They got to pay their fair share. What do you mean their fair share? Like, do you know how much, like, what you, not everyone, obviously, but most of them, at least to generate that income, what you have to do, the outsized impact you have to have on the world to be able to, to generate that kind of return. and it's not. I used to think it was selfish and lazy, and I guess it still kind of is. But when we look at it as this, people just come in different shapes and sizes, and all traits. I think all traits
Mhm.
exist along a spectrum like that, and then this is that spectrum. And that spectrum is specifically being a bell curve. And when people forget about the bell curve, is that 34% of people are one standard deviation back or forward, or towards one extreme or the other, and then the next 68 and then 97. So there's a large chunk of people.
Yeah, there's
Like, why?
over 8 billion people in the world, man. So even if something is only like 1% of the population, you take 1% across 8 billion, man. It's a it's a lot of people.
And we're assuming when we assume, one of the best things someone said to me that stuck. You ever hear something that just sticks with you? She said probability is clumpy, and I was like, yeah, that's true. It really is. Like there's this great little um test you can take, or it's like a challenge. It has four pictures of star distributions, and your job is to figure out which one is the random star distribution and which one is artificially generated. Most people pick the one that has the stars spread out evenly, because that's what we imagine. Going back to that probability and randomness idea, that's what we imagine how it works. It's random, so it's going to be randomly distributed, and when somehow our brains go, that means even and fair. When in reality, it's more these clumps here, nothing there, clumps there, and that works with everything, including how that percentage of people are distributed. Now, there are things we can do to come tip it in our favor. Like you cluster people together, they tend to lean towards one idea. You let them live on land and have a bunch of space, they lean towards another one. But you don't know where that percentage of people are that have that high agency. They tend to find one another. I'll say that too, but we're dealing with a lot of interesting stuff this way, and I think one of the things that is really important and has been really transformative for me, at least, is as I get older, like is I just have greater understanding and I hate using this word, but it's the best one I got. Sympathy, um, for people who are not going to be that way, and just kind of navigate and set my world up to where I can do something about what I can do something
Yeah,
about.
ultimately, man, it's ultimately you can only control the things that you can control. Um, I think that's part of the reason why my natural disposition, for lack of a better term, like culturally, socially, even politically, is more quote unquote conservative because regardless, someone, all the things could be true, like all of someone's complaints about the system and bias and discrimination and environments and things being unfair, like even if I give them all of that and I'm just like, yeah, that's all true, it's like, well, what are you going to do about it? Like you can't, right? You can't hit a rewind button on your own life, let alone the history of the world, and like change all of these things. So it's like, well, here you are, you're 30 years old, you're 40 years old, you're wherever you are. This is the card. These are the cards you were dealt. Some of them good, some of them bad. It's like, okay, well, what are you going to do? You can't control all the other 8 billion people. You don't. Yeah, yeah. You can vote every 4 years, but let's be real. You have no you pretty much have no political power or say, right? You're not going to just change these things that have existed for centuries. You can go out in the street with a sign and scream and what, but like, look, man, like get your own house in order, control the things that you can do, and regardless of where you start, if you at least live in a country with upward mobility, if you at least live in a Western country, or you're in the UK, you're in the US, you're in Canada, you're in Australia, like there's most parts of the world, no matter how smart you are, like if you cannot get out, there's a very low ceiling. Okay, but like if you're an American citizen or you're a British citizen, whatever, like yeah, you can start in a really crappy place. But look, if you make consistent good decisions and you work hard over the course of time, you will achieve some form of success. It doesn't mean you're going to be the next Bill Gates or Elon Musk, but you will achieve some level of success. You can be way above average. Like you can get yourself in great shape. You can be getting above average in physical shape is not difficult these days. Like the average is really bad, right? So like,
Oh man,
okay, so like
it's
sort that
quite
out.
terrible.
Get some type of job or start some type. Like again, you don't need to be balling. Just like something that is gonna have you earning money, and then just live below your means and make smart decisions. Obviously, this is easier if you're a single individual, but like just do
Yeah,
these things consistently. Like don't do dumb crap, and come back 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, like you're going to have achieved something.
yeah. Life is all about the choices you make. Look, if one thing, if you can sum up life in one sentence, one idea, the choices you make. That's it. And by a corollary of that, the choices you don't make either, which is still a choice. But there's nothing. There's no way around that. Fortunately, there's no way around that because people don't people don't realize how terrible it would look if we lived in a society where it didn't matter what you did at all. You were slotted here. You had to do this. This was your path. No, that's why people trash capitalism, and I'm like, you realize that the system, the analogy I give for capitalism is it's like soda. It took two things that were poisonous, sodium and chloride, and combined them into something that's vital for life. And capitalism took individual interest and greed, combined them into two things, combined them into one thing, and now we have this powerful engine that is based on the choices you make. You don't have though. You can decide not to participate, or rather, you can choose your level of participation. You can just be a consumer. You can just be a producer. You get a lot more benefits if you produce things, and it doesn't matter what you produce, whether it's starting the next PayPal, or you write a book, or you put videos on the channel, or something. You get all these choices, you get all these options, but you have to exercise them. That agency part. Going back to the agency, that is key. And I just wish, if there's one, I always think about people ask me, what are the lessons you hope people take from your life? Or my life, I should say. What are the lessons you hope people take from my life or from my book or anything they consume from me? And that is this: there are two lessons. One is kind of the difficulty of anything is irrelevant if it's vital to your success, and two, everything's a choice. And no matter when you start to choose, if you once you start to choose the woo way to say this, live intentionally, right? It's all the same idea. You got to package it differently. If somebody's all into yoga and crystals and shit, tell them to live intentionally. Uh, but but it's all the same idea. You make the choices, and if you make smart ones, even if it look, you don't even got to make smart ones. Just don't make stupid ones.
Yep.
This is a side note. I listen to a lot of crime genre. The two things I listen to right now the most,
Mm.
I either listen to 48 Hours. I didn't even know 48 Hours had a YouTube channel until a few years ago or a few months ago, and now that's my thing. Like when I'm doing dishes at the end of the night or cleaning up, or on the drive up to the gym, it's 48 Hours. Either 48 Hours or this YouTuber Jay Williams. He talks about, yeah, I guess he was in jail a lot. He's got a bunch of prison stories, great stuff. But one of the things that blows my mind, been in a lot of relationships in my life, it's never gotten so bad. Let's say it got bad with Anna. It's never gotten so bad where I'm like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna fucking kill her, and I'm gonna get away with it. Like, like that's a bad decision. It's a really bad decision. Like nowhere does that go well for you. Maybe, but you get away. You're not gonna get away with it. That's one thing too. On a side note, you're not getting away with murder these days. Like if you kill a crackhead or some shit, maybe, but like where nobody cares. But if you kill anybody that someone cares about, Man, look, not that you was thinking about killing somebody, I hope, but they going. Everything's got CCTV now. Any vehicle you drive has a black box. Didn't even notice. It's just like your plane. The plane's not. All cars got black boxes. Anything made after like 2016. Uh, your phone, they can ping your phone. They don't even need a. I mean, they need a warrant, but like they don't need your phone anymore. They used to need your phone. Now they don't even need your phone. They can figure out where you were. And if all that fails, they don't even need to have a DNA match anymore. Like before the old system where we found some blood, let's store it in the system. And if he commits a crime again, we'll find him. Nah, son. If you leave any DNA behind now, they load it up into a program and they look at who your relatives are and they figure out not only do they figure out like who you are based on other family trees, but they got this new shit now. I'm always finding out something new. They can take that DNA profile. Forget a sketch artist. That's old technology. That's the 8-track of forensic technology. They just pull up your most likely phenotype based on your genotype in the DNA, and they produce a picture of you, and it's so close. Like it's
That's
not. Don't kill nobody. That's the
the
moral of the story
moral
because they
of the
gonna
story.
find
Yeah,
you.
people do.
Don't make bad decisions. But all I have to say, if you make a bad decision, it's going like eventually you're gonna have to deal with that. You might get lucky. It's like
Hmm.
you from the UK, so you probably know this story. It's like when
Oh boy.
NRA tried to blow up Margaret Thatcher and they missed. And these were some gangsters, man. They issued a statement. Today we got lucky, but you always have to get lucky. We only got to get lucky once. And at that point, what are you gonna do with somebody that's got that mentality? Okay, but you take that idea. You always have to get lucky when you make bad decisions. All that has to happen is what should happen one time.
Mm.
This is why I stopped drinking because I had been pulled over. I had interactions with law under the influence behind in my vehicle on 4 different occasions. So that's 4 times. I don't have a DUI. I don't have a real criminal record. I got some non-moving traffic violations because I tend to be a little N-wordish when it comes to paying my tickets. But like, other than that, it's I'm good. But how many times am I going to keep trying to outrun the law of large numbers? Right? I'm not doing it. So you gotta. So I made a decision to stop. I don't know. I think about this so often, and I think that's one of the benefits of being older when you make life changing decisions is that you get to reflect and be grateful. I think about the timeline that I could have gone down and what that timeline looks like. I don't know what it looks like, but I know how I was behaving before I jumped off of it, and I don't think we're sitting here because I don't do the things that make me worth talking to, or I'm in prison. I don't think I hear my son running around outside my office because I don't think Anna stays with me. I messed that up somehow. Or I'm in prison. She made it bad. She chose bad, and I ended up behind bars. There are all types of things that can happen. That should happen if you keep doing something stupid. Everyone wants to believe this is back when we were saying about probability and versus determinism. I used to have this fear, right? I used to have this fear. I'm gonna have a sip of beer, get behind the car, woo, I'm gonna hear it right behind me. Now it doesn't work that way. Your odds of being busted for a DUI 1 in 2,700, roughly. I calculated this for an essay. Okay, that's how often do you get in a car? Probably about that 2,700. Maybe not 2,700 trips in one year, but maybe two. You gonna get pinched eventually, and maybe you're not drinking every time. But look, man, I was just pulled over a few weeks ago because man, I keep forgetting to do my registration. It's like a year old now. I tried to tell the cop, I'm like, look, man, you see the kid in the back, man, I'm busy. I need my car. He's like, yeah, but it's like 9 months old, man. You gotta deal with this. So I got a non-moving traffic violation, which I almost forgot about, which and they would have suspended my license. And so I went, paid it. But the whole point with all that uh is you you can stay in the game. You can stay in the game if you make smart decisions. And sometimes a smart decision is just not a stupid one. That's it. And the good thing about stupid decisions is that there are they're pretty clear. At the very least, there's not that many of them. Like I have a video about the three ways a man can destroy his life. You either get in trouble with the law, you have kids with the wrong person in the wrong situation, or you get hooked on a substance and you don't end up, which is not exactly trouble with the law. It certainly can lead to it, but those are the three: drugs, wrong relationship, crime. If you don't do any of those three things or do anything to put you in position to do those, to encounter those, you're always in the game. Now, whether you make decisions to start winning the game is a different story entirely. But I think a lot of people are just kind of drifting along, which is certainly better than jumping off the cliff.
Ed, man, you're one guy who I can talk to for hours and hours on end. But I want to close this one out. But before we do, by the time this podcast comes out, your new book is going to be out. So tell us a little bit real quickly about the book and let my listeners know where they can check it out if they're interested.
The book is the story of my life, and it starts with my growing up in the projects and some of those things I talked about, and I tell that part of the story first because you got to understand the mentality of someone who chooses to box. I can't remember the guy's name now off the top of my head, but he was the director of USA Boxing, and he said, whenever kids ask me should they box, I always ask them, "What did your parents beat you?" And if the answer is no, you probably shouldn't do it. That's a little extreme. It actually got him fired. That and some other comments, but there's a lot of truth to that. And so I lay down in the first part of the book the life that I led that got me in the boxing. You got to check it out if you want to learn the origin of the crackhead hustle, for example. That it's in there. And then I talk about my boxing career. It's the second third of the book, and really where I'm struggling with the drinking as well, but also the progress I'm making in my life and how alcohol almost derails it multiple times. Uh, I wish that the story was Ed was an alcoholic. He found boxing, got sober. Nah, if anything, boxing made it worse for a long time. But eventually, I make the right choices and get things done. And then the last kind of section of the book is about the life after drinking and how I really started to progress in the other areas of my life. But then I have to start dealing with things that I was not dealing with when I was drinking. And as I was writing the book, one of the things that I had to do, this was a fun challenge. I needed to tell my story in a way that it was engaging. Because look, I mean, I lived the life. It doesn't sound spectacular to me. It doesn't even really sound fun or interesting. But then when I start writing it down and looking at it, I'm like, this is great. But I wanted to do it with subheadings of lessons. So if you've been following me on Twitter or seeing in my content, I'm real nice with the short form, man. Like I'm good. I'm pretty good with the long form too. Let's not get it twisted. But the short form and the tweets, that's where I cut my teeth. Because I think, how can I get this idea across short but comprehensively? And so each section is a title of a lesson. I got a bunch of these copies. Because when you publish the book, man, they send you a bunch of finished presses before. So I got it right here. And like, just as an example, some of these sections and these chapters, a hard childhood makes it easy to accept harsh truths. If your miserable life doesn't motivate you, nothing will. You only have to get unlucky once to ruin your life. Like we were just talking about these ideas, and then there's like the subheadings in each one. Like, constructive criticism can make someone's life better. Destructive criticism always makes it worse, type of deal. Being the best of the worst still means you're in a bad situation. So I really no matter how well the book does commercially, I'm really proud of what I put together from a purely creative standpoint, because I told my life and I told it in a way where it's not just me talking at you and I'm dropping lessons, and it's not the way preaching at you. It's each little section has this great heading that you can write like, oh, that's a really great tweet. If you want to tweet or take away from it. Uh, and I think people who read it are going to get a lot out of it. At the very least, if you read it, you cannot not get a lot out of it. I put my heart and soul into this book. My kid was just being born. I'll tell you what, writing a book. Just a quick note on the process, so we don't. And I swear I won't drag this out. Writing a book is not. It's easy compared to marketing, at least in my opinion. And I'm good at both. I just think writing is easier. But when I got the book deal, my son was born November 2022. Yeah, we signed the deal in February of 2023. And in that interim, I have to redo the proposal, which it was a 69-page document. And then I get it. I signed the deal and everything. And then we got to move because we were living in an apartment. Got to find a house. And when no one tells you about finding a place to live, and this is going to sound obvious when it comes out of my mouth, it was certainly obvious when I lived it, but I didn't think about this. There's this period of time where you got to pack everything up. That takes time. And you got to find a place where you're going to go. And then once you find that place and everything's packed up, you got to move, and then you got to unpack everything. And you don't do that all in one day. It takes time, man. And during that time, your house is a mess. Your life is a mess. You don't even really have a place to work, but you got to do all this. And you can get back to it. And that was cool. Except then I had this kid who don't sleep. He would not for the longest time. He needed to be held. He wouldn't sleep or put him down. So we're all sleep deprived. I'm sleep deprived trying to create, because when you write, there's a creative part and an editing part. You People think you just sit down and word. Nah, man, I wish it was like that. I wish I was one take Jake. Like, man, I can't do that. I needed to sit down, hash the ideas out. So what I started doing a lot of times, because he would sleep in his car seat. That's the luck we got. He loved his car seat. I throw him in the car seat and just drive. And I had Otter. Shout out to Otter. I had Otter while I was talking about. I would just tell the story, and so it really worked out great. It was a good time. So that's the story behind everything, and my crazy self. I said, let me go fight again to promote the books. I got to fight on July 12th, so a few days away. That's gonna be a good time. I'm excited about that. Been training hard for it. Got a lot of help from some sponsors. I got a shout out too for sure. Mida Nutrition. They make it's really Mida is great because I did all this research about the supplements I should take, and I was like, oh, why does no one talk about trimethylglycine, for example, as opposed everyone talks about creatine, not trimethylglycine and betaine, and there was one other big one. Oh, ALC, all this good stuff. And his supplement line just all does it. So check out Mind Nutrition, and then Rebel Health. Those guys got my. I didn't realize my thyroid was jacked up and my lungs were I got asthma. I didn't know I had asthma. I thought I grew out of it. Nah, man, I've been fighting with half a lung my whole career basically, and they got me right with that. So I'm excited about this, and excited see where it goes. Everyone's kind of, you're 40, man. You sure? I'm like, nah, man. I know what I'm doing. I'm not saying I'm the best. I just know what I'm doing. I know the risk.
No doubt, man. Well, good luck with the book. And Ed, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, man. Maybe next time I'm stateside, we can catch up in person. But
yeah, man, because we caught up in person
yeah.
before. It was during the whole COVID craze.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh gosh.
And like a G, man. Anybody who thinks Zuby don't stand on business, he's like, we ain't going there, man, and we ain't wearing masks.
Ed, man, so good to talk to you, bro. And I wish you all the best with everything always, man. Proud of everything you've accomplished.
Hey, thank you, man. I'm happy to have met you.